Hello there, you're very welcome to episode 13 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. It's Jamie Moore and Darren Cleary with you each Wednesday here on Off the Ball. What a packed show we have coming up. We're going to check in with the latest on Athlone Town. Aaron Callahan, of course, resigned as manager. We then found out that he'd actually been banned by the FAI for 6 months for some offences, and we're going to hear from someone in the Athlone camp and find out exactly what's going on there. Another club in trouble at the moment are Limerick, towards the bottom of the Premier Division. They held a meeting on Tuesday night to try and get some more funding into the club, and also released a very interesting statement last week about some fans in their ground and the chance that they were aiming towards their players, and that follows on from a chat we had here last week about my views on some football fans and the language used in football stadiums. We're also going to check in with the First Division UCD's Jay McClelland as well, and the Cobh manager Stephen Henderson, who we understand handed in his resignation over the weekend but was convinced to stay by the club, and they're now into the EA Sports Cup semi-final. Another team into the EA Sports Cup semi-final are Dundalk, and we're delighted to welcome our first guest on the phone, Dundalk defender Brian Gartland. Brian, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Jamie.
Firstly, Brian, this time last week we spoke to your captain Stephen O'Donnell on the show ahead of a big game against Waterford, a game your team ultimately lost 2-1. He broke his leg in that game. I know he had an operation over the weekend. Just explain to us what happened from your viewpoint, and I suppose, you know, how much of a blow it is to you, your team and to Stevie that he's going to miss the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's massive. I think it might have been the way he landed more so than the challenge or whatever, but I suppose it doesn't really matter how it happened. It's devastating news for Stevie and for us, because he's been such a leader, and he's one, if not the best player in the country. When he's on his game, he control any game, and he's just got that head that you can't teach in football. He sees things and he understands things. I suppose you either have or you don't have, and it's going to be a massive loss for us for, I don't know, the next few months. We wait and see how he gets on with the specialist, and he'll have surgery, I think, this week. So
yeah, as well, it was one of those things when you saw the images of him being treated on the pitch by Danny and by Sam, the two Dundalk physios, and you could physically see Dundalk players visibly upset at what had happened, and that can really affect a team in a match, can't it, when you see your captain and one of your good mates off the pitch in such pain and being taken off on a stretcher?
Yeah, it can, but I don't think that had any effect on us in the game after that as such. It can affect you. We're a very tight knit group, of it, everyone knows. It's a real collective up here, and Stevie's, he's one of our leaders, so it's devastating when we see that. But it's no excuse, sort of thing, for the next 5 or 7 minutes or whatever after that. We wouldn't use that as an excuse for conceding a goal or two.
Yeah, it was an amazing period in the game, just watching the highlights on Soccer Republic on Monday. Isiaq Anadi scored twice on 45 plus 2 and 45 plus 7, of course, because of the long stage where Stevie was being treated. And then Ronan Murray scored a cracking free kick in the 54th minute, which was still in the first half, Brian, to make it 2-1. And that period ultimately won the game for Waterford, which I know, from your point of view, will be really disappointing. Yeah,
it's disappointing for us. They're two sloppy goals for us to give away. We haven't really conceded many this year, and so it's disappointing, especially when you're coming up just to half time like that. I suppose with Stevie getting injured and Dan carrying an injury, you sort of just want to get to half time, regroup, and organise where you go from then. So concede 1 is poor, but to concede 2 is awful. At that time of the game, now it was a cracking free kick by Ronan Murray, and that gave us a bit of life going into the second half. And I think we did everything but put the ball in the net. We missed chance after chance, and we kept them out at the other end. I thought we put in a really good performance. I suppose goals aside, and we deserved to get something out of the game, but it wasn't to be. And I suppose sloppy mistakes, if you give the goals away like that, and then if you don't take your chances as well at the other end, you're not going to get much out of games if you do that.
Brian, you mentioned there the loss of Stevie O'Donnell, massive influential character over the last couple of years. In recent days and weeks, another influential character gone in the form of the backroom. Graham Byrne is off. Tell us a little bit about the impact he has and what he's done over the last few years at the club.
Yeah, like I said earlier, our team is a complete collective, and that goes for the management. We didn't have big backroom staff, like there'd be a lot of coaches in other clubs and stuff like that. We wouldn't have had maybe as many as other clubs, and it was a real sort of tight-knit group in that, and Graham was part of that through and through, the whole, all those 3 league titles, the cups and the European campaign and that. And he was, especially the early days, he was he was a massive part of getting that ethos of moving, strength and conditioning, and raising our fitness standards. You know, we brought in different ideas and different things, and he was a massive part behind that. As well was every player that played, because every player that came in bought into it. You need the players to buy into it as well. So all players that have been with us and left, and players that are still there, the ones that are dedicated and sort of rode in behind that whole ethos. You know, it was brilliant what Graham did, and hopefully he has a good career going forward wherever he moves on to next.
I mean, that success, it's probably rooted in the fact that throughout a really difficult and trying campaign, both domestically and Europe, you're able to manage multiple games. I think during his period there, soft tissue injuries, Stephen Kenny touched on the fact that you didn't have a whole lot. You were a team that trained smart and played smart. In terms of keeping that ethos going forward, you mentioned, is it difficult to replace the guy, but is it possible to keep in practice what he brought to the club?
Yeah, listen, like, I've been a big advocate of Graham's work, you know, as he come in, and I've said it in plenty of interviews, but, you know, a big part that seems to be looked over is the players, and how the players buy into it, and how the players look after themselves. Graham gives us the tools, and gives the tools and sort of the program, and, you know, and go and do this, but it's ultimately up to every player to go do it and live your lifestyle that way. You're only with Graham for a few minutes or a couple of hours a week, sort of thing. So it's how you live your life outside that. So when he was giving you the information on you need to sleep better, your nutrition, your this and that, it's ultimately up to all the players to go do that. You could have the best fitness coach in the world come into a team and it just won't work if the players don't go off and do that. Football, professional football, is a 24-hour lifestyle sort of thing. So yeah, it's like, you know, sing Graham's praises and that sort of thing as well, but you need to give credit to everyone else that, I suppose, put in the work as well with it.
Yeah, of course, because it's the players who have to, you know, impart the work that Graham is working on with the team on a weekly basis, Brian, and that has gone quite well for much of the season. It went very well on Tuesday night, a 3-0 win over Bows in the EA Sports Cup quarter-finals. You're into the semi-finals, 2 goals for Dylan Connolly on 7 and 21, and a late strike by Jamie McGrath has secured your path. I know, Brian, you were an unused sub in the game. What was it like, and happy to be in another final? I think Dundalk have had great success in this competition. I think 1 or 2 of the last 4 seasons, so to be 1 game away from another final has to be pleasing.
Yeah, it's great. You know, we always say every year we want to win every trophy, and we don't lie when we go to that. And I think it shows by how we're in the League Cup semi-final or final, and 1 or 2 years, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, we're always thereabouts. Every trophy up for grabs, we want to be there at the end of the year. Last night was brilliant because I suppose in the last round I needed the game, you know, to get fit because I hadn't played. And when you're not in the team, or if you haven't played in the last week or two, it's brilliant to come out and get a good competitive game. And the depth of our squad, like, it really shows last night, because, you know, the names out there and the lads playing, they can all easily start on any given Friday. It chops and changes. Like, we played Pats in the last game, and I think like Stevie O'Donnell, John Mountney, myself, Stevie Flown and Dean Jarvis, you know, all Ronan Murray, Dylan Connolly, all involved. And then a couple of weeks later, you might be playing in the league game. You know, it just, these games are brilliant for you to have a good competitive game, and as well to be able to put out a team like that and go and win and get through to the next round. You know, is brilliant. A lot of clubs seem to, you know, when they rotate or if they give lads a game, they drop their standard. Their standard doesn't drop; it stays high, and our performance stays high. And last night the lads were excellent. Yes, and of course Dylan Connolly scored 2 great goals, you know.
Yes, and of course you'll be joined down to semi-finals by one of the other teams in top form in the Premier League, in Derry, who beat Shell 7-3 on Monday night. Cobh, we're going to speak to their manager Stephen Henderson shortly. They beat Longford 2-0, and Sligo, in really poor form in the league, knocked out Waterford by 1-0 as well. And Darren, before we finish off with Brian, we have to mention a young man by the name of Andy Lyons, age 17. Andy's uncle, the late great Johnny Lyons, was a great friend here and off the ball on 98FM Sport. Andy is 17. He made his Bows first team competitive debut last night, marked Dylan Connolly in the game. And he made his debut, so we have a very famous right back who we hope will do well in the league.
That's a really unenviable job. I mean, Dylan's one of the most talented players in the country. I can't imagine the pride that the late great Johnny Lyons would be beaming with if he was able to watch that and see that. It's so nice to hear the name Lyons on the radio, and hopefully we'll be hearing a bit more of him an unbelievable achievement and a great breakthrough, and testament to what Bows have been doing with youth development. A lot of lads they're bringing in have been homegrown, and it's nice to see a guy with a nice affinity to Off the Ball and 98 FM get a run out.
Yes, indeed. I know his older brother Ken and his dad Morris were here to watch him as well, so well done to Andy on his debut. We're still here on Off the Ball's League of Ireland podcast, episode 13. It's Jamie Moore and Darren Cleary here. We're on the line with Brian Gartland from Dundalk. Brian, final two questions on the league. Back to action this Friday. It's 7:45 kick-off Dundalk against Sligo Rovers at Oriel Park. With the way the league is going, particularly with yourselves in Cork, it seems to be you win a couple of games, you drop some points. You guys are top, they're top. At the minute, they're 3 ahead. What's your views on facing a Sligo team struggling at the moment, but you need points because it looks like it's going to be you and Cork right to the end again, and come the end of the season, if you're dropping stupid points against the likes of a struggling Sligo, you'll be very disappointed.
Yeah, obviously, it's a home game on Friday, and we want to continue our good home form winning. I suppose the top teams are all taking points off each other, and that's, it's quite competitive, and Derry have been on a great run as well, and Waterford is, they're right up there as well. Failed to mention them, that I think they'll strengthen again in the summer. They have money behind them, so I wouldn't just say it's ourselves and Cork, in the title race at the moment. There's another couple of teams in there, so you can't, I suppose, discount any of them at the moment. But coming to Friday, we expect to put in a good performance again, and at home 3 points is always our aim, no matter who we're playing. Sligo are, like you said, they're, I suppose, not doing as well as they'd hoped at the moment.
It looks like
they want to bounce back after a home defeat, especially the last day, so they'll be looking to put in a good performance.
I know we've all been pretty impressed by Waterford. If it is to be a straight shootout between Dundalk and Cork, how important have Cork been in your success over the last few years? I mean, it seems like every great team needs to have a team to hate and drive them on. How important have they been in trying to get you guys up to those standards and having a credible rival at all times? Yeah,
it's great for the league, and everyone needs that. Like you said, it drives you on. Competition's good. It's like in the team, you sign other players, in the same position, and that competition it drives both players on, fighting for the same position. And it's the same thing when you go with your rivals. Is that I suppose we talked about the fitness there, and Graham came in and he brought new ideas and new things into our strength conditioning, and we were, for the first 2-3 years ahead, we were way ahead of everyone, and that drove Cork on, I think, and they raised their fitness standards, and last year they were notably higher than every other year we played them. I suppose relinquishing the title last year to Cork has to drive us on, and it has to give us motivation to push on. So that rivalry, it's good for the game, it's good for us, it's good for Cork, and it's great for the league as well, because you need that to have, I suppose, interest, neutral interest from outside the two teams, sort of fans and people will join in and get a bit of following behind it. So the more teams that come in and are competitive in terms of Waterford and Derry and that, the better it is for the league, because ultimately that's what we all need to strive for here, is a better league going forward.
Yeah, certainly is. That is the voice of Dundalk defender Brian Gartland here on the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. Brian, thanks so much for your time. The best of luck on Friday, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, thanks a million, lads.
Yeah, what a huge game as well, Sligo against Dundalk, Darren. And the EA Sports Cup into the semi-finals. Now, you would like to think before the draw is made that Derry and Dundalk would be the favourites to go and win the competition, given the results the other day. But we're going to speak to Stephen Henderson in a second, the Cobh manager. They're into the semi-final. And also Sligo, really struggling this season in the league. Haven't been really good at home either, but they managed to beat Waterford 1-0 on Tuesday night to get into the semi-finals. And they're about one game away from a final. And it should be an interesting draw when it comes out next week. Yeah,
it's hard to overstate the importance Dundalk place on the EA Sports Cup. I remember before they won the league, before they had their breakthrough, the EA Sports Cup success came, and that ended the long wait to actually get back to silverware. They lost a generation of following in the first division, and Stephen Kenny picked up a club that was almost bust, almost done. They just about survived the relegation playoff of Waterford, scraped into the Premier Division, and he went about this rebuilding process. And I remember at the EA Sports Cup final, it was in Oriel Park, and that was their first taste of success, and you just felt it was a turning point, not just for Kenny and the group of players he had at the time, but for the whole club. It is massive for them. They place huge stock in it, and I think they bring a credibility to the League Cup, the EA Sports Cup, that hasn't been there in years gone by. When you have lads like Dundalk who are just obsessive about success in silverware and place this massive stock in this competition, I think it lifts the whole competition, and I think I would fancy, of course, Dundalk to go all the way in it.
Yeah, of course. And one team who will want to go all the way are Cobh Ramblers into the semi-finals after a big win over Longford Town during the week. We're delighted to welcome now their manager, Stephen Henderson, who's on the phone. Hendo, how are you?
How are you, Jamie? How are you? Well?
We're great stuff. Yourself?
I'm good. Thanks very much for asking, my friend.
Can I just say why Stephen Henderson's my favourite league?
Oh, here we go again. Hendo, before Darren says it, what are you going to say here?
He has given Jamie Moore the greatest nickname anyone has ever given Jamie Moore. All the boys in the box will agree with me. Hendo, what's your nickname for Jamie Moore?
I believe the little short arse is there with a white shirt and a white watch at the moment. Is that true?
That's him. J-Mo Short Arse Moore. He's rocking the white. He looks like the Liverpool Spice Boys.
Now, if we're going to start throwing digs here about outfits on the sideline, Stephen Henderson, you don't want me to start.
You leave Neil Fenn alone now.
Yeah, we will.
Just don't be going at him now.
We will. We'll leave you alone.
He said leave Neil Fenn alone.
Oh, no, I was talking about you. But anyway, we'll move on nicely to the action. And the action at St Colman's Park on Tuesday saw your team into the EA Sports Cup semi-finals. Talk us through your win over Longford, Hendo.
Obviously, it was a difficult week for us. But just over the course of the season, Jamie, we've been shown kind of glimpses that we're a good side. We've had no luck whatsoever. We've been struggling to score goals, and then on the back of that, we start conceding a few. So, we worked hard on our defensive shape and then breaking out of that defensive shape, and it was a matter of time before it kind of came together. And thankfully, against a very good Longford team, it has to be said, Neil is doing a fantastic job there. It really came together, and I think we are fully deserving of the win. I think Neil would admit that. And, it's just a remarkable achievement for us in our current state to get ourselves into a national cup semi-final. Obviously you'd like to go all the way, but for this group of lads to get that far, it's absolutely fantastic. It was very well deserved. Like I said to you before, they're the most honest, hard-working group of kids that I've ever come across, and I'm absolutely thrilled for them, Jamie. That's the God's honest truth. Everything we do is just to see them have a smile on their face, and they were beaming at the end of that game last week. Yeah,
of course they were, and it's a mad game football. Longford had to make the trip to you guys as well over the weekend, and they ended up winning the match 1-0, so they bounced back so quickly against them. And goals either side of the half-time break, won by Darren Murphy, 43 minutes. Great free kick into the top corner, and then just before the final whistle, Andrew Wall made it 2-0. Stephen, you mentioned there about it being a very difficult week, should I say, and after the game against Longford on Saturday, you spoke to some of the local journalists and outlined your frustrations with what's going on at the club. We're going to just have a small listen to some of that exchange now.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I suppose what's happening, JMO, is every year we have an AGM, and through those AGMs the committee changes, and then during that transfer, I suppose lads are trying to find that fee. Now, what was happening as well is that we had 12 games, 9 of them were away from home, and if you add that to that, then the fact that we have under 17s, 15s, 19s travelling away from home. There was a huge financial outlay for the club that we didn't take into account for, and things were getting ropey. That's the best way I can describe it. Without going into too much detail, it was very frustrating. We were getting nervous that it was going to get into a stage where we were going to have to ask players to drive to matches, and I just didn't want that. And we wanted to sit down and have a good conversation. Where are we going? Where is the club going? We're not apportioning blame at anybody. But I'm in this game long enough, and all we ever ask is that the standards that we have for the players, we can't afford to pay them. So the least we can do is be as professional as we possibly can in terms of the coaches that we provide for them, in terms of the kits that we provide for them, and the small amounts that we do give them, that we make sure that that's given to them on a regular basis. Because for young lads who are going to college, for me that few bob that we give them could be getting them to college. It could be something that's important for small things like car insurance. I don't know, stuff like that. It's usually important for them. So it's important that once we make a commitment to them, regardless if it's an amateur status or a professional status, we stick by that. We felt that we were in a position where that was, it was in jeopardy. This had happened to me before, Jamie, and I tell you, it was the most horrendous thing in 2008 when we were in the Premier Division. It was just after a few months that, I was called into an office and told to go out and tell the players there's no money for them for the rest of the season. So 2/3 of that 2008 season, Jamie, we basically had a group of boys driving around the country, competing against players who were getting €2,000 and €3,000 a week. And I had lads living in my house with me, trying to look after them and mind them throughout that season. It was horrendous, and I wasn't going to prepare to go through that again. So it kind of all got on top of me. Then there was obviously the little things, a lot of people jumping on the kit man stuff. Without the kit man stuff, was just trying to, that is a hugely important role within a football club. I don't think people understand how important these people are, the volunteers who have everything ready for you and make your job easy. Even that wasn't there. So, we had a good meeting. The players wanted to have a meeting. I sat down and spoke to them. The players had a meeting with the committee. I went in and we sat down, we had a meeting. And what we're going to do is we're all just going to roll our sleeves up. Committee, myself, Dewey, Decky, Shane, the players, Bar, everybody. We're just going to sit and try and get ourselves through this and, through fundraisers and whatever it takes to try and get this team to the end of the season. And then obviously to get ourselves into a semi-final. Not only is it brilliant in the football context, where the fingers are really crossed here now that it's a home draw. And, I'm sure we get a few thousand in the gate for that. And, I think that would go a huge way to making sure that we're solvent and we can look after these kids the way they deserve till the end of the season.
Yeah, of course, as well. I know from a point of view of a manager, Stephen, you don't want to give the players excuses when they go on the pitch. And if there is stuff that you felt and feel had been going wrong and then the results go wrong, you can hardly, maybe demand more of them if the club aren't providing what you wanted. And there's a piece in the Sun newspaper over the weekend that said you actually offered your resignation or maybe actually resigned over the weekend, and then you had the meeting with the committee, you stayed, and you're now into a cup semi-final. What happened over the weekend? Did you actually resign, and what did the club say to you to make you stay?
I did resign, yeah, I did. I gave in the resignation and I sent in a resignation, and it was something I didn't want to do. You know what I mean? That's the truth, Jamie. I didn't want to do that, and people probably felt it was genuinely never about the results. I understand that, like, the way we are with this football club, but we're very orientated by bringing young players through. But it was 3 years down the line, and at this stage I was hoping that we would be able to have at least 3 senior players consistently within that panel to help the young players. But we were never able to do that, so the frustration of that, and then me going to players and selling this to the players, I was starting to lose that. I hadn't got that to sell them because instead of progressing and getting stronger as a club, we were actually regressing. And that was a huge concern because we put an awful lot of effort into it. We all do. Do you know what I mean? The players themselves do. We all the coaches. We all the committee, the volunteers. We put an awful lot of work into it. But, how constructive was that work? That's what we needed to sit down and have a look. Like when you're on a football pitch, you work hard, but is it constructive hard work that you're doing? Or you're just running around in circles, and tiring yourselves out. And that's kind of what we were doing off the pitch. So we've agreed, we sit down, we have a strategy in place. But, sometimes things happen that take you off the ball. And I suppose for me, the alarm bells went off at the last EGM, where, you know what I mean, Jamie? It was very frustrating for me and for the people who were on that committee to sit down. There was a trust there. That trust was generating really important finances for the club, between €4,000 and €7,000 each week. And, this AGM went on and there was a motion to remove that trust. For whatever reason it was. And what was equally galling for me was that this AGM was ran when alcohol was being served. And you could hear the voices getting more abrupt as it went on. And then they removed this trust. And they removed this money that's hugely important for the running of the football club. Not to go into people's pockets, but to go into the club and to pay for these buses, to get our under-15s to matches, to get our kids to the matches, to get our team to the matches. You know what I mean? This is what that money's for. And on a whim, it was just taken away. And when I seen that happening, I should have known then. And I did honestly feel then that, okay, there's going to be problems here. Do you know what I mean? That meeting should have been cancelled. As soon as the alcohol was involved, it should have been cancelled. It should never have went ahead. Because that was a huge decision, just to remove that trust on a whim.
Stephen, can I ask who made the decision? Do you know who tabled the motion to remove it?
Well, there was a couple of lads there. Do you know what I mean? That they were actually on a committee, a subcommittee to help us, and then they didn't get that way, and then all of a sudden they showed up, throwing out a load of making people apologise. People who are given 40 hours a week to the club for nothing. it was a horrible meeting. It was disgusting, it was. And then obviously, you'd expect the chairman of the club then to turn around and say, hang on, this is out of order, we're going to cancel this, we'll have the AGM again, and we'll make sure there's no alcohol involved in it, and make sure that everybody was there, and then so we could explain properly why that trust isn't there and how important that money was. But it's gone, and there you go, and this is the consequence of it. That we had nine away fixtures in our first 11 or 12 games, and the money was drying up, and we had nothing in place to cover that. And that was a huge problem. It was frustrating, and it was affected me because, like I said, I brought all these youngsters in there. I'm the one that sells the club to them, and I was not going to be in a position to go up and say, look, lads, this is where we are. So, it provoked a good response in terms of we had that meeting, the players, we all sat down, we all had a good conversation. We've actually got more people to come on the board, thanks be to God for that, because there was only 7 of them, and they were knackered. We needed more people, and but the problem is that there's too many people that want to have a go off it. You know what I mean? They can all identify the problems, but they very rarely come up with the solutions. And I think we're fortunate now that we're either getting 2 or 3 really good people. It's not confirmed yet, but I think we're either getting 2 or 3 really, really good people that can come in and drive us, help us generate a bit of finance and get us through to the end of the season. And then we can regroup and say, look, how are we really going to push forward? And put a template in place that if the committee is constantly changing at the end of every season, that template is there, that new people who come onto that committee know their jobs, know what their targets are, and this is what it's like to run this football club. This is the finance that's needed to run all the teams within this football club, and we can go about and maintain the standards and the professionalism that we've been building over the last few years. And through that, and through the work of these players, and I say these players because they give up a huge amount of time for us. They're absolute gems they are. Here we are, we're only there 3 years, and look at, we're at their finishing 3rd, we're at their finishing 2nd. We got ourselves to a quarter-final of the FCI Cup. We won ourselves a Munster Senior Cup. We got ourselves at the playoffs, and here we are now in the semi-final of the EA Sports Cup. These are a special group of young lads that need to be minded, and I just couldn't handle the fact that the possibility that we couldn't mind them the way they deserved, was going to happen, and that's why I handed in the resignation, and I was devastated doing that because I love that football club. And that football club provides a fantastic environment for young players who maybe have been turned away from other clubs. You know what I mean? And this is what I'm saying to them. Look, just because someone else doesn't think you're good enough doesn't mean you're not. This is what Ramblers is here for. This is what we're here for you for. You can come here and you can shine. Play at the highest level. And if you do well, okay, you're going to go off somewhere else. That's a double-edged sword for us because, that means we're not strengthening year on year. But then we're happy that the kids are moving on. That's what that club is there for. It's there to facilitate.
They have done that for you as well, haven't they? Because, you mentioned the 3rd place finish, the 2nd place finish. Those players have rewarded you. Something has obviously changed in the last few days. You tendered your resignation. You're still speaking to us as the Cobh Ramblers manager today. What actually changed in that intervening period? What assurances have you got? And has that fund, which you mentioned was very important and so important, that was raised by the trust, has that been reinstated?
Not yet. But we're going to try and get it reinstated. The other thing
is that a deal breaker for you? If that fund is gone, are you gone?
Well, it is gone. It was gone. It was taken away. That's the thing, you see. So what we have to try and do is, you see, when that was taken away, the problem was there was no alternative. Take it away, okay, why? But what's the alternative? How are we going to regain that money to put back into the club, into the running of the club? And this is where my frustrations stem from. So basically, these conversations was that, look, we have to get more people in. And I've had 2 or 3 really good conversations with 2 or 3 really influential people who are prepared to come in and help us kind of regenerate that finance and just to get the club so as we can look after the players, make sure even our 15s are travelling to the game properly, make sure they're dressed properly, just give them all the small trappings that's needed to make them feel like professional footballers. That's what changed. Is that we have these 2 or 3 people coming in who have great ideas and who I know personally are really hard workers and that will take us on and hopefully recoup that money. And that's what's really changed. In terms of trust, nothing's changed. That's gone. It was done. lads come in, have a few points. Here, come on, we get rid of that. Yeah, off you go. It was amazing. It's simply amazing.
I can't actually believe that at an AGM or an EGM that the lads were having the points and then having a vote. It sounds absolutely bizarre. Anyway, Hendo, let's finish on the football if we can.
I couldn't believe it either, and this is what happened.
Incredible stuff.
And this is where I kind of seen, that's where my alarm bells start going off from the start. You know what I mean? And then when I started seeing that there was, there was nothing to do to replace those funds, this is when I started getting more panicky, and this is when it started to get down on me, and then what have you. So like I had to go and have make a stand for myself. Look at, lads, I'm in this league a long time. I'm very opinionated. I have my own ideas on how football clubs should be run, and I was always proud of what we done with Ramblers. Is that if we sat down and we told the players, this is what we have, this is for the season, and there'd be no problems with that. I was always very proud of that. I hate from the 2008 episode, I've never let a player down, and anything I ever do within the football is all player orientated to make sure that they get the best that we can offer. And that was slipping away from me.
Of course.
So that's why I felt I had to move on.
Yeah, of course. And one thing that you'll hope won't be slipping away from you, Stephen, is a chance to get back to the Premier Division again. And, you mentioned about second place finishes in playoffs over the last couple of seasons as well. In terms of the league table this season, you picked up just 8 points from your 10 matches. That leaves you 10 points off 4, which is the last place for the playoff. A long way to go, of course. And your next home game, another one at St Colman's Park this Saturday against Cabinteely. Just very finally expressed to us the importance with everything that, you've said over the last 15 minutes and the discussion that you've had with the club, that now your team goes back to the football pitch and tries to get yourselves up the table near that top 4.
Well, we everything went into the football anyway, Jamie. I think what I was saying to you was that we were playing well. There was lots of positive stuff about us, but you need a bit of luck in football as well. And what I was saying was that, like, the bounce of the ball, you could see if the ball took a wicket bounce, it was going to their players. If it was a 50-50, it was just all this stuff was happening. But you could see that the effort was there and that the shape of the team was right and that we were nearly getting there. I think, hopefully, apart from getting into the semi-final, that the players seen that, like, this is the kind of standard that if we play like this every week, then we can start going up the table. What we'll do is take it's the cliche at this stage, James. I would say, do you know what I mean? It's one game at a time. It's Cabinteely, very good side. Do you know what I mean? They're a good away side. They have lots of threats in their team. So what we have to try and do now is put the semi-final to the back of our minds, taking the performance, and can we improve that performance, and then week on week. Like I said, the teams up there at the minute, they're all going to be beating each other. Yeah. So it's a model for someone to come out of the background. Now, if we continue to improve and play the way we played against Longford, well then I'm sure that we'll be putting in a push come the final series of games, because our luck had to turn, because you wouldn't believe some of the bad luck we've had since the start of the season. Fantastic
stuff there. That's the Cobh manager, Stephen Henderson, speaking to us here on episode 13 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. Hendo, thanks so much for your honesty. The very best of luck next Saturday, and we hope to see you in our studio soon, and you'll be in the best clobber with the waistcoat back and the grey hair, yeah?
And I'll do a sunbath session as well, just to make sure that you don't show me up.
Hendo, thanks a million. Chat to you soon.
Thanks a million, lads.
Now we're going to stick on the first division, and Off the Ball's Will O'Callaghan is making his League of Ireland podcast debut. Will, hello, how are you?
Afternoon, how are you guys?
From one man who does a sunbed to another.
Correct, yes indeed. Now there's no sunbeds in Athlone, there's no sunshine in Athlone currently. You also work in the Midlands, and last week on the podcast we had some breaking news, which was that Aaron Callaghan told us exclusively that he'd resigned. And quickly, I'll just bring you through the statement that he gave us last week. He said, changing a football club's culture is one of the most difficult leadership challenges a manager incurs. That's because the club's culture comprises of an interlocking set of goals, roles, processes, values, communication practices, attitudes and behaviours. To raise the bar in any industry, you need to set professional standards and evolve with the competition. Somehow this message never landed. The players and the staff have my utmost respect, and I wish them every success. Last straw was on Monday night when we had no physio and no warm-up gear. The story moved on, Will, as my phone has just fallen off the desk, excuse me. The story moved on when the FAI announced that Aaron Callaghan had in fact been banned for 6 months.
Yeah, and then pretty soon after that, the club made an announcement via their official Facebook page at Lone Town AFC, where they said that Aaron Callaghan had said he resigned, but that was maybe just a certain point of view, that their feeling was once he had copped the 6-month ban, that the club were going to sack him anyway. They just allowed him to get out first with the news. So.
How can you resign from a certain point of view? It seems that there's a little bit of doublespeak there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the thing with Athlone Town is it's always been perspective, and at the moment we probably have two very entrenched positions which have gone legal in recent times between the Athlone Town Stadium Company and Athlone Town AFC and the board themselves, and now we have an Athlone Town
What's
consortium.
the root of that dispute, Will? What's the issue there?
Well, the issue really comes down to whether a gift or an investment is what was put into the club just over 2 years ago when they had substantial stadium debt and that was hanging over the club, and effectively 700,000 was invested into the club, is the perspective of those who were in charge of the Athlone Town Stadium Company, who are currently taking this case to the High Court. They're appealing at the moment a decision which was made that was welcomed by the club last month, because crucially for the club, not just signing over the Stadium Company to themselves, it would also free up a sports capital grant which would allow them to put a 4G surface in place at the stadium as well, which they were unable to do so up until now. It was one of the key things that Roddy had looked for, Roddy Collins, their former manager, 5 years ago when the club were promoted. You remember that Roddy hightailed to Derry very soon after Athlone were promoted. He had come with a list of suggestions to the club, and one of them was that there had to be an all-weather surface at Lissy Woolen in order for him to stay. The club didn't have the money at the time. They secured that funding, but that funding was held up during the stadium dispute. Declan Malloy owns about 97% of the shares in the Athlone Town Stadium Company at the moment, so he's the chief shareholder. There are also some other shareholders like former FAI president Paddy McCall. They're in dispute with the club currently over whether Mr Malloy's money that he put in can be seen as a gift or whether it was seen that he bought shares inside of a company. Both sides...
Do we know what he sees it as, a gift or...
He sees it very much that he put an investment into the club, and that's the argument that he's going to make. It's back before the High Court over the next few days. The decision is expected then by May the 30th. So effectively the plans for Athlone Town to push ahead are on hold until that court decision comes in on the appeal. And Mr Malloy is very confident he's going to win and that he's going to win his fees. Speaking to the club earlier today, they're extremely confident that they're going to win and win their fees. So both feel that they're going to win. I mean, obviously, this story has so many twists and turns over the last couple of years. The consortium, headed by Tony Connaughton, who tried to take over the club about 2 years ago, it was the summer of 2016, he's coming back to the fore again and saying that the current board should step down. He's claiming they have no mandate to be in charge at the moment. You remember last year, not long after the consortium made their first bid to try and take over the licence of Athlone Town, Eric Xiaodong or Eric Mao came in with investment from China. Many foreign players turned up at the club last season, which ended with 2 of those players being suspended for 12 months. They still have an avenue to appeal on that as well. But since that all happened, those investors have left. The club have gone to an all-amateur status for this year, and they have had probably the worst year of all the years that I've covered Athlone Town.
Haven't won a game in a year.
No victories in a year. 27 games are now waiting for a victory, and some very, very heavy defeats. They've conceded over 7 goals on 4 different occasions, and that Wexford game where they conceded 7 was the day that Aaron Callaghan, allegedly, because he is going to appeal this as well, stepped beyond the terms of his suspension and then got a 6-month ban as a result. Yeah,
and I wanted to just mention a few of the recent developments in Athlone, and I know, Will, we're going to speak to somebody in the know in a moment, but you mentioned they haven't won a league match for a year. They played 27
the year anniversary
games.
was last week.
The record, 0 wins, 5 draws, 22 losses, a goal difference of minus 74. They had 5 managers last season. They're now their second manager this season, Terry Butler, in caretaker charge. He said at the weekend that he wants to stay in charge for at least the rest of the season. They had to play an outfield player in goal for the match against UCD. Only lost 2-1.
Yeah, Luke Kelly played in that game. He played in goal and apparently had a decent game in goal as well.
That game I think could have been actually against Cabinteely, not UCD. And things just go from bad to worse for them. As you mentioned, 4 times this season they've conceded 7 or more goals. Yeah. And I know there was a meeting held during the week by the Athlone Town Consortium. Just tell us, what was that meeting about? Because basically there's some new people, some fans as such, who want to take control of the club, but only if the current people on the committee get out the door.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like a flashback to 2016. And when people think, is this a new group who are coming together? Tony Connaughton was at the head of that consortium at the time 2 years ago. The idea that they had at the time was Athlone Town's licence was likely to be in trouble. There was an FAI report into the club taking place at the time. There were claims about unpaid players. There were claims that the stadium wasn't insured because they hadn't paid rent to that company, which is majority held by Declan Malloy, so therefore...
The company that has them in the High Court at the moment.
Effectively, yeah. So the club was in crisis at the time. The consortium came together. They had spoken with clubs who had previously come together, like Galway United, Cork City. They got advice from those clubs. They spoke to Shelburne and Drogheda. And it kind of fizzled out, realistically. And the licence was then granted to the current administration again. Current administration have been reasonably unpopular, including town legend Michael O'Connor, who's there. You've got the current chairman John Hayden, who's been there for quite some time. They're saying they're doing their absolute best for the club, but fans have been turned off, particularly over the last 2-3 seasons. We've been seeing gates at Athlone Town of less than 500. There was an FAI Cup game a couple of years ago where there were more protesters outside the ground than paying patrons inside. So Athlone Town have kind of become a running joke. It obviously got got a lot more serious last year when the club were on the front pages as opposed to the back pages, with the players that were being brought in, question marks over where these players were being paid, then the betting scandal of last May as well. And now Athlone have kind of lumbered into a season where people thought, okay, it's local players are coming in. It's an entirely amateur squad for this season. People wondered about Roddy Collins, stepping upstairs. What was Aaron Callahan's role going to be? Where does Terry Butler fit into all this? And now we've seen them kind of go from one to the other. We've seen all three of them hand over at different times. Roddy, stepped upstairs for start of the season, disappeared before the first game, which I think was a massive warning sign for any Athlone Town fan that things were uneasy. Then Aaron Callahan takes over. He leaves in frustration based on his statement that he feels the club weren't pulling in the direction that he felt they should. His claim, at least, is that there was no physio available. Now, the club didn't directly refute that in their statement either. They said
one of their players was testament to it, because in
he
that
tweeted
Leinster Senior Cup game, he thanked the Shells physio for coming on.
And you would have to say from that point of view, and I know certainly in the League of Ireland, in the underage teams, if you're, Finn Harps, you travel to Cobh, the home team provide the physio.
Is that not a licence requirement?
Well, it is, but that's the point I'm making. If an Athlone player had been seriously injured in that match and there was no physio, you wonder what would have happened. And, from the point of view, we spoke to Stephen Henderson earlier on, he's talking about standards, looking for a kit man. You can be guaranteed Cobh had a physio. And we've seen over the years, I was at a football match a couple of years ago where a young kid called Shatemi Oyetigbo dropped dead on the pitch, died. These physios are not just there to treat a cut or treat a broken leg. They're there to give you CPR. They're there to help you if you need it. And for Athlone not to have a physio at a first team match, if that is the case, is scandalous.
And look, Athlone over the last 2 to 3 seasons have failed to meet a lot of the basic standards. They failed to fill a fixture in Waterford, which really should have been, I think, the death knell for the club at the time. I was surprised that the FAI still granted them a licence after that, because Waterford missed out on a home gate. I know Athlone were punished later in the year.
I remember the suggestion at the time where there was no bus company to take them because they had outstanding debts to other bus companies. And
plenty of players would have said to me privately as well that they were owed mileage for quite some time. And if that's the case and the players felt that they couldn't travel as a result, there's only one way the club is going. If this was a business, this business wouldn't be seen as viable. Athlone Town are a storied club, former Premier Division champions, oldest club left in the league, and it pains me to say that they're just going from crisis to crisis to crisis.
Yeah, they are. And I think as well the point about if it was a business it would be closed down is correct, but if they do get their AstroTurf and they can, earn money from that, they can rent it out, they can use it for all their teams, they can have it as a training base. That, in my opinion, is what's keeping things rocking along.
And depending on what happens with the court case,
is that
they
not
have
all
a very good
dependent on them
too.
settling their issues with the guy who actually owns the ground, though?
I would think so, and it's an interesting one what will happen. And from our point of view, and from my point of view, I would hope that it does get sorted out and that Athlone do get AstroTurf and that they do start, because to bring themselves back to where they feel they should be, because we've seen recently with Wexford as well. Wexford, the team who hammered Athlone at the weekend, hammered by UCD, and you're going, why and what is going on that you're going onto a pitch? And lots of the other games, I saw Athlone in the match where the famous match where the lights went out against Cabinteely. They were very competitive.
Yeah,
very competitive.
The lights have gone out a few times for Athlone Town at home over the last year or two as well, due to a lack of diesel in the generator, which, it's just embarrassing when these kind of things happen as well. It's embarrassing that the team didn't have sufficient warm-up kits for that game in the Leinster Senior Cup as well. And you got to wonder, when it comes to an image problem for the club, with the revolving door of managers they've had, particularly since they went back to the First Division after their ill-fated year in the Premier where they failed to win in the first half of the season. How is Athlone Town going to be attractive for a manager to come in next year? Who would want the job if Butler doesn't stay in charge until the end of the season? From a player's point of view, who's going to want to go to the club? Their season is effectively written off already at this point. They've absolutely no chance. You talk to Hendo about getting into the top 4. Athlone, if they won every game till the end of the season, wouldn't probably be in the top 4 with the way things have gone. So it's a very sorry state. But I would stress, when people wonder, is a consortium going to go and take over Athlone Town, that many of the people who are involved in this very consortium were there 2 years ago, and a takeover didn't happen. And those who are in control at the moment still feel that they're the best people to bring the club forward.
Yeah, I want to know where the people who are meant to administer this league are. I want to know where the people who are running this league, because it would be kind to describe what's happening in Athlone as a mess. It would be kind to describe what happened in Cobh in the last few weeks as messy. The people who sit down and make the fixtures at the start of the season have only put Cobh at home 3 times in 9 games. They're a First Division team that will just about cover those losses, barely. And they do that knowing full well that cash flow, or that lack of cash flow, can cripple a club. I think the people who hand out the licences have an awful lot more to answer for. It's easy to sit here and put the boot in Athlone and the people at that meeting in Cobh, but the people who actually administer this league, I think, have an awful lot to answer for.
They do. And Will, there was people last night answering questions. Just tell us who we're going to hear from now, the Athlone Town Consortium, who want to take control of the club. You've got some info on it, what they've had to say.
Yeah, we'll hear from Tony Connaughton now. He's a local businessman in Athlone, a fairly well-known local businessman as well. He was looking to try and take over the club in 2016. He's back at the head of this consortium again. And here's what he had to say. He spoke to Midlands 103 earlier today.
The present administration have no longer a mandate and haven't had for a long time. It's represented the wider community of the football fraternity in Athlone, and indeed the business community. And all I'm saying is that with the greatest will in the world and recognising the fact that they have tried, they've done their best, and I'm not knocking them for that. But for whatever reasons it's not working for them, and it's continually not working for them, and I'm asking them to step aside, do the right thing, and allow somebody else an opportunity to try and do better and get it right. That's all I'm saying. We're entitled to try, and the fans are entitled to see somebody new, to make an effort to see can we move on from our present situation, which is very poor. As far as the consortium is concerned, everybody would be in agreement. And as regards the general public, I think the general feeling would be that the support would be there for a new administration, no matter who that would be or how the makeup of that would be.
Yeah, I think the support, for a new administration might be there, Will. Will the support be there in the stadium with bums on seats if things start to improve? Because you can get sponsors, you can get investors, you can get what you want, but they do need people to come to their matches every second week. We mentioned Cove's home gates. Athlone, I would like to bet, have been the lowest supported team in the league, and I would include Wexford in that in the last couple of seasons because of what's happened. And what's interesting,
go back to the 2012-2013 season when Athlone Town went up under Roddy Collins, and when Philly Gorman was banging in goals, and Athlone were playing some decent football that season as well. Athlone were getting gates of over 2,000 at the end of that season. Some of the best fun I've had in terms of covering games was going to Athlone Town Stadium around that time when Athlone were going for promotion, the night that they got the draw against Waterford that they needed to go up. That was obviously a great time for the club. It was amazing how quickly it fell off though, and I'm not talking about fair weather fans, but people get disinterested and disgruntled very quickly. When Athlone were taking beatings in the Premier Division, the gates started to fall, then the club started to fall into free fall. I think particularly what happened with the club last year, and to take Darren's point about the governance of the league and people keeping an eye on who comes in, people were sold a pup last year in terms of the players that were coming in and the investment that was apparently going to happen. I think that created a great disconnect between people in the town of Athlone. And bear in mind that Athlone only has around 20,000 people as well. You're talking about having to mobilise a lot of people from the town and the surrounding areas to come and see the team. And there's always been that feeling as well that Athlone have become a Dublin club. Teams have trained under managers in Dublin. They've brought in a lot of players from Dublin to play as well. Local players won't necessarily give you the winning football that'll bring the crowd back, but definitely people in the town have felt a huge disconnect with the club in recent years. And can you really blame them when they're sitting bottom of the league so far adrift?
Yes, that's why I kind of feel sorry for the people running the club in a sense, because I don't think that anyone is actually trying to do a bad job. I think they have the best interests at Athlone at heart. I think they're trying their best. They got sold a pup last year with shady investors who came in and promised them the world. They literally knocked at every League of Ireland door. We covered the Shells meeting. One of the investors that approached Shells was the same guy who was involved in Athlone, and all the stuff that came with that last year, well documented. We don't need to go into it. But I think that they got overwhelmed, they got involved with the wrong people, and it's just spiraled to a point where they are in trouble, and they do need someone to come in and help them out. A fresh injection of people who can try and clean up the sorry mess. The problem is the force there at the moment are not unifying. They're not going to be able to, as Will said, they may have alienated a portion of the fan base who don't trust them and don't want them to fix it. And that's where the problem lies. They don't want to cede control to people who have no real idea how to run a football club. And they don't know how to keep going. They don't know how to turn it around. So it is a really sorry situation. Yes, and Atlone's next game this Friday is in Lizzie Woolen at 7:45 against Drogheda United. The last time these teams met in Drogheda, I was at the match. It finished Drogheda 6, Athlone 0. So they need some hope for this coming Friday as well. Will O'Callaghan, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jenny.
You're on the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast, episode 13. It's Jamie and Darren here. We're going to move from Athlone in a bit of trouble to Limerick, who we're going to find out exactly what's going on there, and be joined now by the sports editor of the Limerick Leader, Don O'Sullivan. Don, how are you?
Good, lads, and you?
Great, thanks, Don. Thanks a million for taking the call. Now, there's a couple of stories involving Limerick over the last while. They released a statement during the week to slam sections of their own home support for disgusting treatment of players, and they then released another statement to do with ticket prices and what they feel is some inaccurate reporting in the media. I believe there was a meeting last night involving the chairman and owner, Pat O'Sullivan, about trying to get more investment, and if it doesn't come, they'll be going back part-time next year. You're in the know there. What's going on?
Yeah, you summed it up fairly well there, to be honest with you. The timeline of events, really, I suppose, was that Pat O'Sullivan had called a public meeting some weeks ago that was to be held last night, which was held. A lot of fans and, of course, business people and the media were all eagerly anticipating that meeting. And then this press release comes out yesterday from the club, as you say, slamming their disgusting behaviour of certain people attending games, and went as far as to say that they wouldn't call them supporters. There was more in that about ticket pricing, to say more about pyrotechnic fines. It just all kind of came out as one big long statement, which caught everyone by surprise, as I say, the supporters and the media. So that led into last night's meeting with Pat O'Sullivan, who openly at the start of the season said he wanted to sell the club. He still wants to sell the club, but I'm afraid maybe the interest in potential buyers has waned based on the mess that has been Limerick FC from the start of the season all the way through. Some good signings on the pitch maybe, but what you realise now is that the fans don't, and the players and opposition players don't like the pitch, which is one issue. Then this comes out, a statement comes out slamming their own fans. Then the fans, some of the Blue Armies are called, some of the most loyal fans that travel up and down the country, have come out and said they won't be attending games. There was criticism over ticket pricing, under 16s having to have ID to get into games, and it's just from one bad news story to the next. And unfortunately, when you're second bottom from the table, with 13 points from 16 games, and that's not the worst story, you're in real trouble, aren't you?
Yeah, if we can split this down into three parts. Firstly, the original statement to do with the disgusting behaviour of what they called fans, or what they wouldn't describe as supporters or fans. Where did that statement come from? And I know you're a regular at the Markets Field at the home games on the Saturday evenings, another playing Pats this Friday. Pitch is terrible by all accounts. What exactly, are these fans, in inverted commas, saying towards the pitch and towards the players, and why were Limerick so upset about it that they decided to release a statement and alienate these people who were paying money into their stadium every second week?
Yeah, I think everyone that's been at the Markets Field, obviously myself, Colin Kinsler, our soccer correspondent, Andrew Kineen, who covers the games for us as well. We've loads of freelancers have all come to the same opinion that the section of the crowd that creates most of the atmosphere also have crossed the line maybe at certain times in things they've said, things they've sung. I mean, they have a song for every player. I know there were some songs or maybe some chants that were in bad taste. It's obviously the whole league is trying to promote a family environment, so there was a couple of complaints made. I do know that the club met with some of those fans last Friday, which, they, as far as we're concerned, that they settled their differences, buried the hatchet, as it were. Things have been said that shouldn't have been said. I think everyone's big and bold enough to admit that, but also on the flip side of that, some of those fans that won't be attending for this Friday night's game bring the best atmosphere to the game, and I suppose maybe some of the young kids like to go along and like to sing along and like the beat of the drum that plays for 90 minutes that many away fans will be familiar with. So things that have been said, haven't been right. I think there was a better way to deal with this. Anytime you go public against a large group of people, you're kind of tarring everyone with the same brush. So I think a lot of Limerick FC fans, regardless of whether they sang a chant or didn't sing a chant, or what they thought of chants that were sung, or abuse maybe that was sung at players or said at players, they're now disillusioned with the club, because anyone that's walking around town in Limerick, which is a huge sporting city, is now looking at Limerick FC fans all with the one, I suppose, blue tinted glasses.
Don, it is an extraordinary statement to try and tell a fan base which can dwindle as low as 700 and 800 at a home game at times to stay away. We don't want you here. You're not helping. In terms of wrapping our heads around the actual words that are said, I mean, what is this? Is it racial? Is it personal? Is it mean-spirited? What's actually been said that has exercised Limerick to a point where they're saying, get away, we don't need you, all you're doing is causing problems?
Yeah, the club seems to think that it's personal towards some of their players. You can see that in the statement. It's not really for me to repeat exactly what I've heard in the past. There was a couple of comments that I would think have crossed the line. I mean, this goes like, how do you pinpoint who's saying what in the chants, or how many of a certain section of a crowd are saying something? If a player is not playing well and they start to chant something at him, okay, fair enough. But all this goes back to, as you correctly say there, look, if there's 700 people at the game, are the maximum 200-300 people going to be singing and chanting at any one time these bad things? They know who they are. They're easily identifiable. I think the club, at one point, wanted to ban some of these guys from the ground. Why didn't they just sit down with those guys and have a chat with them? I know, there's a bit of history with Pat Sullivan and these fans in the past as well, and even their arrangement, the way they sat in the ground, had been an issue previously. But for a small club like Limerick, which can fluctuate wildly from 700-800 to 4,000, which we once saw at a playoff game, I think the best thing to do here is to catch more bees with honey than vinegar and just go in as a club and talk to these guys and say, look, these chants aren't acceptable. You know, there's Gardaí at the ground. If they hear these chants, or if we're not happy with these chants, and try and, solve it that way. What's actually said, I mean, some people will take offence to something, other people won't. If you're chanting something about a player, the player might take offence and say it to the manager, and you might say something about another maybe experienced pro who just thinks it's all a bit of banter and has a bit of laugh about it. Rightly or wrongly, if the club have an issue with chants, I think they should have gone to the people that they know are chanting. It's not a huge 60,000 seater stadium.
Of course.
Like you might see around, certain chants. I know that went on at Old Trafford last year, that they're asking everyone to stop singing this song. But it would have been so much easier to do this on a micro level instead of blowing it up into the media.
Of course. And Don, just finally, we mentioned at the start that there was a meeting held with Pat O'Sullivan and a few of the other, head men in the club to do with trying to get more investment in. And they basically said if the investment doesn't come from next year, we're going part-time. If you can just briefly sum up, the reasons for, the need for new investment and what will happen if the club goes part-time, because if we look at the league table over the last couple of seasons, the part-time teams finish at the bottom.
They do, absolutely, yeah. Look, and that would be a serious blow to Limerick FC. Going part-time, as far as I would be aware, would also mean cutting back on resources being given to underage football with Limerick FC, also to the Women's National League side, to the Under-15 National League side, Under-17. There's huge ramifications for going part-time. Pat O'Sullivan has said that the local community, he needed them to come in and support him. He's put so much money into the club. You can't fault the man for the investment he's put in. But the one thing now, if you're looking at it, if you have a load of money in your back pocket and you're looking at Limerick FC, is now the time to buy? Probably not. Is now the time to invest? Probably not either. If you left it a couple of months, I know some business people around the town have said, look, if this thing goes part-time, is it an easier thing to pick up purchasing-wise? It'll be a cheaper price, which is not the right way to look at it, I suppose, but on the flip side, business people work that way. In terms of Pat O'Sullivan himself, he had that meeting last night where he said that Limerick FC is still for sale. People want to come in and invest in players. As far as we know, the board that are currently there aren't going to be around next season, which may open the doors for maybe some fan-based involvement. But again, as you all know, lads, across this league, investment is everything. The money is in Limerick to support senior soccer. I know that. The talent is also here locally to play senior soccer. We know that too. What they need to do is create a product at the top of the pyramid in Limerick soccer that everybody wants to go to. So the fans will come if they're successful. That's the same in all Limerick sports. But the most important thing now is that people have something to invest in, see what they're investing in is family friendly, also that there's a potential return on investment. And in the league like the League of Ireland, a couple of $100,000 invested in the right manner could get you into Europe, and then you make your money back in one night. It seems like a simple business plan, but at the moment the people in Limerick are standing back and looking at this going, if the club are fighting with the fans and the fans are fighting with the players, and there's all these abusive chants being thrown around, and now people are threatening not to go to games at all, and the club are asking people not to go to games, it's not something you're going to put your hard-earned cash into. No,
it is not, of course. And that game you mentioned, when there was 4,000 people there, the playoff game against Finn Harps a couple of seasons ago, Don, I was actually at that match. Incredible atmosphere in the stadium. As you said, if the team is doing well and the people want to support, they will be there. That is the voice of Don O'Sullivan, who's a sports editor, the Limerick Leader. Don, thanks a million.
No, absolutely, anytime.
And we're rapidly running out of time here on episode 13 of the Off the Ball League of Ireland podcast. Very finally, the fixture for the Premier Division for this coming weekend. 5 games all taking place on Friday. It's Bray against Bows, Derry City against Cork City, top of the table clash there. Dundalk against Sligo, Limerick v St Pat's, that game at 7:45. One game in Dublin, 8 o'clock. It's Shamrock Rovers against Waterford FC. Also games on Monday and Tuesday of next week. And a busy weekend too in the First Division. We've already spoken to a couple of clubs involved. It's Athlone against Drogheda, 7:45 on Friday. Galway v UCD, a huge game for both teams, particularly Galway. A couple of poor results for them recently. Top of the table UCD, who you can hear from their winger Jay McClelland in the extended version of our podcast on offtheball.com. It's Shells against Finn Harps, Wexford v Longford, and one game on Saturday, Cobh against Cabinteely. That's it. Episode 13 is done for now. We'll chat to you next week, folks. Darren, thanks a million.
Cheers.
See you. Bye-bye.